All right. Hello. Welcome everyone to today's webinar, Smarter Field Trip Management, How busHive Automates the Entire Workflow, presented by busHive. I'm Amanda Huggett, Executive Editor for School Bus Fleet, and I'll be your moderator for today's event. I encourage you to ask questions during the webinar at any point, and we'll try to address them all. However, if we don't get to yours, don't worry, because you will be contacted by email with a response after the event. So I am joined by our speakers today, Rose Lee, Manager of Special Assignments at Bonita USD in California, Brian Mann, K-12 Business Unit at Transit Technologies, and Brian Mitchell, Marketing for the K-12 branch at Transit Technologies. Thank you all so much for being here with us. Go ahead, guys. Tell us some more about yourselves and kick it off.
Thank you so much, Amanda, and thank you everyone for taking your very valuable and precious time to join us. We will try to keep this as concise and brief as possible to respect your time, but also allow our esteemed guests the time and space she needs to tell the story we're quite proud of, which is how our technology has helped her at multiple locations improve the field trip process. So we are Transit Technologies. We are a collection of about 10 different operating companies that serve transit from K-12 to public fleets to private fleets. We have everyone from Google and Facebook to Mecklenburg County and hundreds and hundreds of K-12 customers, both on the busHive side and on Bike Curve. And we'll talk a little bit more about what we do for them as we go through this presentation. But the point I'm trying to make as I show this next slide is that we have a suite of solutions that are trusted by dozens upon dozens and dare I say hundreds of K-12 transportation managers and leaders in just about every state. And we're going to talk through how we do that in the next couple of slides. Again, the customers who we serve, we're going to talk about Rome City Schools, who's a very proud user of our Bike Curve solution, as is Poway in South Bend. And then we've got a 460 customers today using a busHive the same way that Rose uses it. And so we'll let her explain in a way only she can from countless hours of being in the software managing student transportation. So again, Rose, I'd love to allow you to introduce yourself here before we get into some of the things that I'm going to explain in terms of the solutions we provide to K-12 customers. Love to hear your background as esteemed and interesting as it is.
Well, thank you very much, Brian. So my name is Rose Lee. I am originally from Southern California. I got into the yellow school bus world in 2005. Working with a private charter company in Ontario, California. I worked with them until 2015 when I transitioned to a school district, working in transportation with the school district. And since then, I've worked with 2 different school districts in transportation. And this year, I've now moved over to a bigger world where I still get to assist in transportation, but I'm doing a little bit more with safety and risk management within both of those worlds. But at all 3 companies, I was very privileged to be able to use the EasyBus, which transitioned to busHive system over the last 20 years. And I can't wait to tell you guys how I've used it and how it's helped us.
Brilliant. Rose, thank you so much for your time and your expertise and being willing to share all the examples we're going to go through here in the next couple slides. But first, ladies and gentlemen, I'm in marketing, so I have to do the marketing job, which is promote our suite of solutions, which we have, a litany of data points showing they genuinely help our customers run safer, more efficient, more on-time arrivals for their communities and their student body. The first thing I want to talk about real briefly is just our AI-powered vehicle cameras. One of our sister companies called Vestige has a handful of K-12 customers they serve today. And we have the body of experience, the hardware, the software, and the customer support to help your fleet if you happen to be in search of cameras. We know, unfortunately, this is a very needy, very important technology because of all the things that, for better or worse, happen on school buses. And we're probably not aware that Transit, Bite Curve, busHive are able to provide these solutions. So wanted to share that real briefly. The thing that's really unique about our solution is the AI alerts, as well as the cloud functionality, which essentially means you're able to get these kind of alerts sent to your phone when your drivers are exhibiting any of the behaviors that you wish they wouldn't, i.e. not wearing a seatbelt, being distracted, Lord help us, using their handheld device while they're operating their vehicle. We do this for 2,400 customers in just about every industry you can think of relative to commercial transportation. So while we only have a handful of K-12 customers, I can say they've been with us for many years, they're happy, and we've got thousands and thousands of other customers who use our solutions to improve safety and ultimately give their team the visibility they need to perform better in their roles. So all of our cameras also come with GPS. I know most of us are pretty well familiar with telematics and GPS fleet tracking. So Vestige can do both of those things, and I'm quite confident that we can do it at a price that will be very favorable for your district. But the thing we really want to talk about in terms of our other operating companies specific to K-12 is Bite Curve. Bite Curve is a technology that's been around for about 10 to 12 years. The challenge we have at Bite Curve, admittedly, is there's no other solution in the technology space quite like us. We're not routing, we're not GPS, and we're not necessarily a payroll solution. However, we leverage all three of those systems to provide an enhanced service and solution to our K-12 customers. We have dozens of clients throughout North America, and what we're especially excited about is in the last year, as our customer base has grown and people have had more time to experience Bite Curve, what they found is they're saving tens of thousands of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars in their monthly and annual payroll. We do this by tying the route start and stop time to the actual pay time and do a better job of policing when drivers can clock in and clock out tied to the actual route. There's a lot more to the solution than just that, but I don't want to go too deep here because we're here to talk with Rose and learn about busHive. But we hope you'll take the moment to learn about Bite Curve, visit our website, see some of our case studies, because we're quite confident it can be a transformative solution, both in saving your district money and in delivering an improved dispatch solution that can help with on-time arrivals. And then finally, Faster. Faster is a maintenance software solution, which is also one of the operating companies under Transit Technologies. They have about 40 K-12 customers spread across the United States, and they do exactly what it sounds like. They have a software that helps fleets, mainly public fleets, manage their maintenance. So think about, tracking when you need to put new brake pads on and oil changes and air filters and all the things that, as you have a large fleet, are difficult to track. And in doing so, we help drive down total cost of ownership by instituting better maintenance practices for public fleets. Okay, so we've done our obligatory opportunity to explain the other solutions that we have that can help you perform better and take better care of your community and your students. Field trips, to me, are interesting. As I prepared to do this presentation, I went out online and did some research. And what's interesting is after COVID, for some reason, field trips have become a bit of a casualty. So according to some independent research conducted by Education Week, there's a 40% decrease in on-site visitation across K-12 from the survey they did with, I think, about 2,000 community leaders, education leaders around field trips. So why is this important, right? I think we all recognize the value of getting outside the classroom, adding variety, and even more so, having that hands-on learning, especially at places like the Science Center, the Nature Center, the Aquatic Center, the Aquamarine, all the places where students can attend that enrich their academic experience. We'd like to think that we can be part of the solution to help education leaders and transportation leaders adopt more field trips, essentially be able to use our software to streamline the process and make it easier. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Brian Mann. Brian has led the sales team and the operational side of busHive for many years. I think he's uniquely positioned to talk about the old way that many of you may be familiar with as it relates to scheduling, deploying, and processing pay associated with field trips.
Awesome, Brian. Thanks for the warm introduction. As Brian mentioned, I've actually been on the busHive team for about 14 years now. And when I first started, I was surprised, that there needs to be software out there to manage field trips and athletic trips. Like, how hard can that process actually be? And then after a couple of weeks on the job, after talking to dozens and dozens of school transportation departments, I found how it was really a blind spot in student transportation. There's lots of technology companies focused on home to school routing and telematics, but the field trips and athletic trips, there was a lot of manual processes involved, and it takes many transportation directors and departments hours upon hours every single week to manage these. So there was a clear gap, and we really have two types of districts that come to us. We have districts that are still managing everything on pen and paper, meaning a teacher or a coach will go to their building office, fill out a paper request form. That form will work its way slowly through different departments, usually a school principal, sometimes a business manager, a risk manager, food services, nurse's office, AD, and then eventually gets to the transportation office, usually last minute, for scheduling an assignment of a driver and vehicle. So from that perspective, we're taking all of those manual processes and we're making them all electronic. We're making it so they can really digitize their online request forms, fully customizable. We make it so there's transparency, so everybody can see what the status is of their trip. Did my principal approve it? Did the AD review it? Does the transportation department have it? Do I have a driver or vehicle? All of that is now automated with busHive. Now, the second type of district that comes to us are districts that have outgrown their trip add-ons in their current transportation management technology. I won't say any specific names, but there's some systems out there that field trip management or athletic trip management is just a checkbox. These organizations, they've mastered requesting and approving trips online, but what requires a lot of manual processing is finding a driver and vehicle. Is there a conflict? Figuring out my driver rotation. Who gets this type of trip? How are we notifying the drivers? Creating the trip sheets, collecting post-trip information, the time, the mileage. Is that all still on paper? And generally, from what we see, yes, that is all on paper. The front end, the request and approval, is all electronic. But the back end, the driver and vehicle assignment, the trip sheets, and invoicing for the trips, that's all very paper intensive. So we're going to talk a little bit about how we can help in that area as well. But those are really the two types of transportation departments that we see out in the industry today, and we can help both. Next slide, Brian.
Excellent. Thank you, Brian. So what we're going to have Rose, in her incredible amount of experience and expertise, talk to is the new way. So Brian just explained the old way for two different customer sets. The first being pen and paper, the second being a legacy technology that just isn't serving them as well. And they can go to a new system in which most of the process, 80–90% of it, is completely automated. And there's a paper trail that makes it very easy to audit, to hold people accountable, and most importantly, for transportation departments to get reimbursed promptly and to help them, capture that money that's so important to their budget. So with that being said, what I would love to do now is allow Rose to dig in and speak a little bit about the process from the request, the approvals, and the scheduling, and then we're going to walk through a bit deeper in each of these, how she's managed it in her career.
Hello, everyone. All right. So I started using this program when I first, well, let me back up. So I was in a private contractor and I worked for a private contractor for about 5 years and learned all the processes where, just like Brian Mann said, it was all paper pencil. You're doing things paper pencil, keeping up your dispatch sheets, who's coming in, because a lot of things in our industry seem to change by the minute. So everything we do is living and breathing. I came in, updated our sheets to Google Sheets, Excel sheets. So that way they were more of a living and breathing data sheet for us. And then we were presented with a couple of different programs that we could have used, but we went with this one at my private contractor because it was so simple. It was simple, and it also allowed us to utilize the data that we wanted in our organization, how we wanted to use it. A lot of the other programs that were out there will have stagnant forms. And with busHive, it allows you to customize your forms or add things to forms without having to spend an additional amount of money to recreate a form or to go back and work with their networkers, their design team, because you've already done all that work and you just needed to update it for new laws. So with a private contractor, we started using the field trip system, which we still had people sending us field trip requests that were coming in by email, by pen and paper, but we could use this system to organize them more. And it also helped for everybody in our office to have access to the same information. It wasn't one 5-inch notebook that we were all passing around to see a month of trips or to see a date of trips. Everybody could log into the system and see trip information to answer a customer's question when they called on the phone. Or if a driver called in and said they needed an answer to a question, we could all log in to help. So it was really a no-brainer for me as I moved to my next school district to see that I needed to implement this program as they were still doing things paper pencil as well. And a lot of things in our industry, I don't think they really think about the technology and how we need to keep up with technology in our industry because our drivers are behind the wheel. It's even difficult these days to have drivers checking emails because they don't sit at a computer all day. So at my second district, we started using the system with field trips, but we also allowed our school sites to use the cloud-based system, which was the fieldtriprequest.com. So they were putting in trips on fieldtriprequest.com and they would come to our office in our database. So we didn't have to wait for an email. I didn't have to wait for the district mail to come and deliver a trip request to me. It automatically came in within 5 minutes of them putting that trip in. One thing that we really liked about that when they started that was that it time date stamped when that trip was given to us. And it created a log of when that person sent that trip request to us. So this became really great for us, especially during CIF times when ADs are stressing about buses and their secretaries have ordered a bus and they wanted to have that conversation with transportation that this request was made 2 weeks ago. We could easily log into the system, see a time date request of when it was put in and how we could accommodate them, or see where that was so we could clean up that process and make it better so that our students weren't affected by somebody forgetting to put a trip in or by the mail not coming to our department and receiving a trip. We also really liked the fieldtriprequest.com aspect of this because it left a message board on the trip of the fieldtriprequest.com. So you can communicate on one trip with the person who requested that trip back and forth. You can have a whole chat log and it keeps a time-based dialogue going. So we knew when it was requested, when they wanted to change a date, change a time for a trip. We could respond on that trip to that requester instead of responding to an email thread where you had to then go look for the answer to the question. So that was really nice for us. And also, if we didn't log into the triprequest.com, we could check our email and it would give you an email notification saying, hey, you have a notification to check on this trip that's coming up. And that was really nice because it allowed us to send that notification to my dispatcher, my sub-dispatcher, and me, which gave us a net of a catch-all to make sure that their requests or their changes were being accommodated in a timely manner. We also really like the triprequest.com because when the requesters log on to their portal on the cloud, they can see the status of a trip. It tells them this trip has been booked. You're waiting on transportation's approval. This trip is waiting for your principal to approve the trip. So no one had to continue to call our office 3 days in a row trying to figure out what the status of their trip is or if you've gotten to your trip request, because it's at their fingertips 24/7. If they're at home sitting on the couch, oh no, I forgot to order the basketball bus. They can log in, send that request in, see that transportation's gotten it. So when we come in before everybody else comes in, because a lot of the times, you know, with our buses, we're the first face that students and families see in the morning. So we're there early. We can get this done. And if those people were putting in requests at 8 o'clock, 10 o'clock at night, 5 a.m. in the morning, 4 a.m., when my dispatchers came in, they're like, oh, it's a trip request for today. Let me get on this. Let me see how I can accommodate this. So by the time that requester came into their office at 8 a.m., they already had a message in their box. They could log on to the fieldtriprequest.com site and see if transportation's seen it or where it was at in the process. And that was really nice. So then when I transitioned to my next school district, I implemented busHive here. They had transportation software in place at this district, which was great. But the transportation software that we had was outdated. It was an Access database. In order for us to do anything with the data in the actual program, we had to contact the administrators of the program to ask them, can you run this report for me? Can you send me this data because I need to manipulate it to send it to my business services department. And with busHive, we didn't have to ask anybody because all that was available at my fingertips. Not only was it available, but I could also customize it to what we needed it to do. When I say customize, when you log in, you can change the format of the screen that you're looking at so that for me, it's important when I was a director of transportation to see the basic trip information, what's going on, what day, what time, how many people, how many buses I have in one spot. But my dispatcher who logs in, he wants to see who's assigned to what trip, what bus is on what trip, what other buses can he use somewhere else. So his screen was customizable versus my screen being customizable to see what we both needed and get the information we needed for that day, which was great. Then I can export data. They have ways you can export data, import data, put them in Excel files. I can send them to our business services department, our accounting department, which was great. At this district, we also used the invoicing function. So a lot of the reports that are in busHive, I appreciate the fact that you can click on buttons and customize the wording for them once you have the setups. We in California implemented a new law a couple of years ago, which is called the Pauli law, which then required us to do walkthroughs at the end of the bus to make sure that the bus was clear for all students. So no student was left behind on the bus before the bus got locked up. We had to implement that wording on our driver sheets so that at the end of a trip, the coach does a walkthrough and signs off on the bus that the bus is clear, but the driver also does that walkthrough. And we didn't have to go back to busHive to get that form customized to do that. We were able to log into our admin credentials, add the wording that needed to be added. So we were compliant. We were great. It took me 5 minutes rather than having to go back to the board and design with a design team, an engineer team. And we did the same thing with our invoicing forms. So at our district, our department doesn't invoice our school sites like just straight from the department. And a lot of other school districts do that as well, where they come from the actual business services department. But you're the one that has all the data. You have the times, you have the prices, the increases, all of that. So I really like with this system, I can go in and create an invoice and generate an invoice for a school site that lets them take that invoice and give it to their PTA. Give it to the Natural History Museum who's sponsoring that bus, who's going to pay. They can give that invoice to that department, and then that department can take that invoice and pay it with our accounts receivable and how they're getting their payments and how they work that out. But we were still able to give them a document on this is what your trip was, this is how much how long your trip was, how much you have to pay. We were able to give them that information as soon as the trip was over. at this district too, another thing, every district I've gone to, we've kind of implemented a new step in busHive, which is also great because I just continued to learn and play in the system the whole time. One of the things that we did was the driver portal at this district. The driver portal changed things completely for us, because before the driver portal, our drivers generally work 6 to 9, 1 to 4. If a trip came in at 10 o'clock when that driver's out and they don't come back until 1, but it picks up at 1:30 and it was a last minute basketball trip that's going far away, we want to tie it with their sport, we needed to let that driver know and ask them, is this an extra duty trip that you want? The driver portal allowed us to assign a trip to a driver, and it would send them a notification how they would like to receive that notification, via email, via text message. But as they were away from here, they could get that notification, hey, we have extra duty we'd like to offer you. Would you like to accept this trip? They then could log on to the driver portal, see the actual trip details. So nothing was lost in translation as we were talking over the phone, or if we missed the pickup time on the text message, they could still log into their portal, see all the trip detail information, decide if they wanted that trip or if they didn't want that trip, and accept or deny it right then. So a process where we would have had to wait until that driver signed back on at 1 p.m. to ask them if they were available for a 1:30 trip. At 10 o'clock, when we got the trip and accepted the trip, we were able to know if they would like to accept it or not. So we could continue that process and move on to find coverage. And all while this is going on, just in the driver aspect, the school can log on to the trip request portal and then still see where their trip is in status. So all these pieces are working together without you having to pause and wait on the next person or a piece of paper to make it to your desk to move on to the next step, which has been very helpful. We also appreciate that in the driver portal, it allows our drivers to enter their time and their mileage for the trips that they're on. So that way, if we give a driver a last minute trip, they're on a route at 4 o'clock, but hey, I have a pickup for you at 4:15. Would you like it? They accept it on the driver portal. They can immediately go to that school site, and they're not waiting on that trip sheet on that piece of paper to get to sign in, to put in, to log their miles, to log their time of the trip, so that we can do everything we need to do on the back end. They can go into the driver portal, put in all the numbers, and then fill out whatever paperwork needs to be filled out when we get to the office. But our students haven't suffered at all by making the drivers swing by the office to pick up a piece of paper, or for us to email a piece of paper to the school secretary to run out to them. They still have everything they need. Our students know no different, and we're there picking up our students, taking them where they need to be on time. And that has been a great thing for us too. The last thing we kind of dabbled in, started doing, was our maintenance, in the maintenance section of the busHive portal. And it's been great for us because our CHP officers are like a box of chocolate. We never know which one we're going to get. And we never know which one is going to ask for one specific thing versus the next one asking for another specific thing. So this was a great system for us because we could put in any maintenance that happened on any vehicle, any parts that were used that were repaired. So that way, when my mechanics got their daily vehicle inspection report forms, they could denote in busHive any work that was done on the vehicle, when they touched the vehicle, how long it took, what parts inventory were used on that vehicle. And then when our CHP officer came during a terminal inspection or even during a surprise inspection, they come in and they say, I want to see bus 14 and that log for bus 14 and everything you've done on it on the last 6 months. All we had to do was go to busHive, put in the date range that the CHP officer asked us for one specific bus number, and it completely prints an entire report of everything we did. And again, busHive allowed us to customize what information showed up on that report, how it showed up on that report, and how we printed it. So we didn't have to give the CHP officer more information than what they needed to open up more questions, but we completely can pull a report to answer all the questions they needed to answer when they asked us. So it was really great because it made us look like we were over-prepared, which before, and in a lot of other industries, it's all paper, pencil, carbon paper, still doing that. So I really appreciate the system for allowing us to do that, because I also think it helped me as a director to answer the questions that I needed to ask when I was in certain meetings. So I've told you guys you can import and export data I could import data at any time. Before, at the district I'm currently at, we didn't run reports at the end of the school year to see how many trips were taken, how many trips were contracted out, how many trips one driver might have done versus another driver. And you can export all of that information how you want it, how your district would need it. I'm in Southern California, and we have large school districts like LA County, and then we've got smaller districts like ours, which is Bonita Unified. We have a different culture than what LA County has. We have a different processes, we have different procedures, but yet we're in the same county. So I didn't need a lot of the extra bells and whistles for a school district that has 300,000 ADA when I have 10,000 ADA and our district runs a little different. This system allowed me to customize that to our culture and our district and give my accounts department, my payroll department, my superintendent the answers to questions that they wanted to see. How many field trips did you do? How many field trips did you contract out? How many field trips did Rose drive one year versus Brian driving another year? And what were those cost differences of contracting out? Not only can I do that, I can break it down by school site, I can break it down by vehicle, and it's just all how I have customized this system, but how the system allows me to customize it, knowing the questions that I'm going to get just for our district. So it's been great for us, like I said, by data, by making things available instantaneously, by also giving us the ability to offer our drivers trips, and our school sites and our school secretaries also know the status of their trips that are going on. It keeps a log of the trips, and we could communicate on those trips with those requesters, which has been great because it eliminates a lot of that time that's wasted in multiple phone calls to our office during downtimes when I might only have a secretary in the office and I've got 3 high school secretaries asking about their 1 o'clock buses. Now I've eliminated at least 2 of those questions because they can log on and see the status of their bus or what they've put in. They know what driver's coming, what bus is assigned to look out for. So they're not asking us, who are we looking for? What are we doing? So it's been amazing for me, and I can definitely talk all day about this. If you have any more questions, let me know. But again, I think I've been playing in this system for close to 15 years, maybe, as it's changed and evolved, and it's been nothing but good for us.
Excellent. Rose, thank you so much. Such a wonderful explanation. We obviously couldn't say it better ourselves, so we really appreciate you coming on board and sharing your experiences. I would be remiss if we didn't take the opportunity to plug one more time Bite Curve, which is the transformative payroll and dispatch solution. That is the only solution on the market that will blend the routing, GPS telematics data, and your payroll data to transform the way you manage payroll, slashing hours, if not dozens of hours from the actual process, as well as hopefully drive down your payroll, put more money in your district's pockets, and then as well on the dispatch side, help you be more nimble in the way you manage your daily operations. Okay, so thank you. Obviously, we're very grateful for everyone's time and energy to come on board. We'd like to open it up now to some questions. We know you have them, so please raise your hand and let us know how we can help you better understand the solution. While we wait for those to come in, we're going to ask you a question, which is, how many of you are still manually processing field trips via email or via pen and paper? In short, how many of you are not using a software solution but are using an antiquated, inefficient system like pen and paper or email to manage your field trips? As a percentage, it'd be great to understand how many of you are still doing it that way.
While we're waiting for those responses, Brian, I wanted to jump back to Rose. She mentioned something that I found really interesting, and I've talked to some other clients of ours over the summer. And a big theme that we've heard the last couple of years, federal budget cuts, state budget cuts, transportation department budget cuts. Everybody's trying to do more with less. It's kind of a cliche, but we've heard in the recent 12 to 18 months that being able to bill back other budgets or other departments within the district for these trips that the transportation department is operating has been really critical to protect the transportation budget. Because if you're not tracking those costs, if you don't have a way to send an invoice or a statement for the trip, the chances are all those costs are falling on the transportation department's shoulders. How critical do you think being able to bill back and be able to accurately track costs from time, driver pay, mileage, fuel and wear and tear on the vehicle back to these departments? How do you envision that, helping transportation offices, having the ability to do that?
I think this system completely helps directors do that and answer the questions that they're being held accountable to their school boards and cabinets. Especially, just like I said, I'm able to set up that system and export information to show them how many miles one bus ran, but also what field trips that bus drove, or if that bus was only home to school. And I can do that by running one simple report for them to do that, which made it easy for me because it's not something I have to sit there and plan 6 hours or 8, multiple hours to put together or compile data to do, because I can set that all up in busHive and easily export information. And as a director, I was asked that multiple times. Because like you said, not just building up those programs, but showing why they're relevant and what we're doing and where that money is going toward. And like I said, I've done that with reports in busHive. I've exported that data and easily sent them that information to cabinet shop. They're like, we just asked you for this and we have a board meeting tonight. And I'm like, yep, I got you. Go.
Absolutely. Do you think it helps, let's say there's a transportation director that's, being told there's a $200,000 cut you got to make to your budget next year. If you can go back and protect that funding and say, okay, we can take on that cut, but we're going to go back and we're going to bill the band director for the trips. We're going to bill the athletics department for their trips that we operate. Do you think that's helpful to help, again, protect transportation department budgets and funding?
It is. And not only so you know where costs are allocated, but so that you also can predict your future costs that are coming in. Because it helped us to see how many buses were actually being used on field trips, what drivers were being used on field trips. And it also helped us. We have 2 high schools in the current district that I'm at, and it helped us to see what high school was using transportation more than another high school was using transportation, which then brought their questions in. Okay, what's going on? What's happening? How can we do this? It also helped us to see what was being contracted and what wasn't being contracted, because you can run those different columns as well too in that. So we could see, our drivers should be doing more of these trips, or what can we do in-house to protect those costs rather than giving this money outside rather than feeding our people that are in our district type deal. So that helped a lot.
And when you're farming out or contracting out a lot of trips, I guess it would be an interesting data point. Do we need to purchase additional buses? Do we need to hire? I mean, I guess everybody needs to hire more drivers these days. Everybody wants to, but making those decisions or advocating for more vehicles, to the board, I'm sure, if you can prove that, you've outsourced hundreds of thousands of dollars, when it might cost a fraction of that to run it in-house, I'd imagine that's important.
It also helped because once we ran all this data, we could see how, like I think you had mentioned earlier, how much it's costing you to run your operation per mile, how much it's costing us to transport each student. And then because it's so easy in the system to export that data, we could break it down per sport, per activity. It cost us this much to transport each baseball student this season. It cost us this much to transport football and cheer, which also helped, I know, their boosters on how much they needed and giving them their goals for what they needed to accommodate in the future by the data that I was able to give them for what we had done.
Right, we have a new question in from the audience for the Bryans, I assume. This person says, as a private school bus contractor who works for the district providing buses for athletic trips, Can the districts use fieldtriprequest.com to send trips to us, and how will they be notified that they have a trip request?
That's awesome. I step in above the Bryans and I let you know that not only we also do trips for our city, and they are not within our district, and that's how everybody requests a trip through our department, is through that system, and they all get the same communication. And our local cities, when we help them, we do a lot of seroptimist trips. We do a lot of philanthropy trips for a lot of the students that live in our district that face a lot of headwinds and don't have tailwinds. And all of the people that we work with and them putting in their trips, they love it because they're not waiting on one person. They can get the same logs that everybody gets in our district to know where their trip is and what status it's at. And they use that message board like crazy because they're not within our district. So it's not like they can easily stop by our office and chat with us, but they can easily send us a text message that has to do with one trip and not talk about the other 80 trips that they might have put in.
Great question. Okay. So it's been 40 minutes now, 42. So I think we've consumed enough of everyone's time, Rose's especially. I want to be respectful of the incredible amount of expertise and experience she shared. So thank you, Rose. And to everyone who stayed on with us for the last 42 minutes to better understand both busHive and the full suite of transit technologies. We just hope you will take an extra 90 seconds and do the survey. I know we're all surveyed out in this universe, but it does help us understand if this is a good investment in order to talk to this audience. And if we provided content that was useful to you, because we don't want to, waste anybody's time, obviously. We want to make sure these are valuable. So please take 90 seconds to do that. It's very helpful for us as we go about doing these in the future. Otherwise, happy Wednesday. Have a great week, everybody, and a wonderful school year. Stay safe out there.
Yes, thank you.
And let me just remind
Rose.
everyone too, we did just get a question about if the presentation will be available later for anyone who joined late or couldn't. It will be, yes. So this will be available on demand on the School Bus Fleet website. Just go to schoolbusfleet.com/webinars to view the entire replay. And thank you again for all of you who attended and for all of our presenters.
Lovely, thank you.